Greetings everyone, peace to you all.
Welcome back.
Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they're excellent and commendable. Today, we will be reviewing Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, the modern reimagining of the 1997 JRPG classic by Square Enix. Remake Intergrade only covers the first third of the game, with the rest of the game to be covered in Rebirth and a third entry. I originally viewed this as a poorly veiled cash grab, but that point of view was before I played the game. After playing the game, I can understand why they did it this way. Players play as the mercenary Cloud Strife as he tries to find a new life in the city of Midgar. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, prior to this review, I have played all the Final Fantasies between 6 and X2, including the PC version of the original Final Fantasy VII. So I may make some references to the original, and I have finished this game to the credits. Regarding the technical state of Final Fantasy Remake Intergrade, I played the PC version and did have some noticeable frame drops in certain places, but for the most part, it didn't really bother me too much. So without further ado, let's jump in. Just like in the original Final Fantasy VII, the core gameplay elements of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade consist of combat, exploration, and minigames. Combat has been revamped from the original turn-based active time battle system. In the original, battles happened on a battle screen separate from exploration screens, and characters would take turns based on when their ATB gauges filled. You can still play in a similar way if you choose the classic option, but I decided to experience the new system the way it was meant to be played. In Remake Intergrade, the combat system is a hybrid of the original combined with more action RPG systems. The battles no longer take place on separate battle screens. Exploration and combat are one and the same. The action RPG elements include basic attacks, a special attack, blocks, and dodges. However, to use items, spells, or commands, players need to wait for the ATB gauges to fill. Basic attacks and blocks don't do that much damage, and filling ATBs to use commands is actually quite critical. Once your ATB gauge is filled, you may select classic Final Fantasy commands like spells, items, and limit breaks. The elemental weaknesses and all the classic Final Fantasy kind of stuff is still there. However, some new action RPG mechanics that were not in the original are the pressured and staggered mechanics. When an enemy is pressured, their staggered gauge fills more quickly than normal. When an enemy is staggered, they stop attacking entirely, take extra damage, and may even have some special vulnerabilities that they may not otherwise have. Learning about how the pressured and staggered mechanics work is arguably even more important than the elemental weaknesses. Enemy variety is rather limited. Almost all the bad guys are Shinra troops, robots, or experiments, but that is to be expected given the limited setting of Midgar. Bosses and mini-bosses are somewhat similar and even a little repetitive in terms of flavor, but mechanically there are some differences in how to approach them strategically. One cool aspect of boss fights was how vitally important it was to use terrain to block special attacks, which, while annoying, felt appropriately challenging. I also enjoyed a lot of the one-on-one duels that come up during the story. Remake Intergrade has a lot of different ways that a player can progress in terms of combat. Players can acquire new weapons, armor, and accessories as you might expect. Weapons can also level up, granting that character stat bonuses, passive abilities, and sometimes even active abilities when equipped. An even more important aspect of progression is gaining materia. Green materia will give the player new magic skills, yellow materia new command skills like assess or steal, blue materia for support modifying linked materia, red for summons, and purple for passive abilities. Not only can the player gain materia, but materia can gain levels as well, which also improves the abilities as well as the numbers on the materia. All in all, combat was a lot more fun than I expected it to be. I honestly expected the turn-based combat of the original to feel dated, and the newer aspects of the combat to feel shallow, neither of which was true. Exploration in the game is what you would expect. There are plenty of secret treasure chests and items hidden all over the place. Sometimes the game will put treasure or materia in plain sight and have puzzles for the player to navigate in order to obtain said treasure. Exploring also involves talking to NPCs and doing tasks for them, which have been given quality of life improvements in terms of the quest system. A lot of the quests are boring and fetch quests, but some of them provide more detail for the setting of the slums or character development, which I really appreciated.
I'll do it for 3 gil.
Huh?
I'm offering a special discount right now on Toad King jobs.
While the quests overall are nothing to write home about, I actually ended up doing most of them, which I originally did not expect to do. Perhaps the most unexpected thing about the game was how many mini-games there were. I had sort of forgotten about how many of these mini-games existed in the original, and there were definitely a few new ones. There are box destruction mini-games, combat mini-games like the Coliseum and the VR Simulator, there are rhythm-based exercise mini-games, there are even a few mini-games to unlock special rewards as part of the story. All in all, the game was a blast to play, even if the quest system wasn't perfect. Overall, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for fun factor. FF7 Remake Intergrade has a shocking amount of educational value, even if it is lacking in some ways. There isn't really any factual or conceptual knowledge to learn from the game. However, motor skills do matter. I initially viewed the action RPG aspect of the game as just button mashing, with nothing requiring the precision of something like God of War or a Souls-like. Yet, it's my understanding that many players are able to dodge many or even all of the enemy attacks with proper timing, something that was actually quite difficult for me. There's also a lot of strategy in the ATB system as well. Saving limit breaks for too long limits the possibility of getting them again, but saving them for the right enemy or to use during a stagger could be quite helpful. Summons also require some finesse, as summoning when you don't have ATBs ready to fire off may cause you to lose summon time without being able to use their abilities. How to equip weapons for different builds for characters, and how to combine materia in different ways can also matter a lot, especially in terms of which materia to slot in and how you use the blue and purple materia. The amount of depth to the gameplay was more than I expected, and so overall I'm going to give the game 4 stars for educational value. The cultural value of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is incredibly high. The original FF7 had low polygon character models combined with pre-rendered environments. However, both the characters and environments have been completely redone to bring Midgar to life the way we always imagined it in our minds, with characters more expressive than they ever were. Combat animations are very stylish and make each of the main characters seem quite impressive in their own ways. Well, not Aerith, but I guess she's not supposed to be. With the exception of the map, which was pretty good, the UI felt surprisingly lacking, but I may be subconsciously comparing it to the UI of Atlas games. The music is comprised almost entirely of new arrangements of the original songs, paying homage to the original soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu. Honestly, I think this was an excellent choice by the developers because many of the scenes or characters look different with updated visuals, but the soundtrack is still able to evoke intense feelings of nostalgia. I really enjoyed the voice acting for the expanded characters, Jessie, Biggs, and Wedge.
But I've got my blasting agent. You should have everything we need for our next mission.
Sure hope so. Yeah, me too. For your dad's sake.
The voice actor for Cloud also did an excellent job, but probably the standout actor for me at least was definitely Barrett. The plot is rather simple, but that's not unexpected given the nature of the remake being only the first third of the game.
These sewer rats appear to call themselves Avalanche, sir.
Still, the writers did a good job in capturing some of the nuance of the events that the original did not have.
You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
The way that the game further fleshes out Midgar, both visually and in the story, is satisfying, but it's the character development that I really liked. Cloud's aloofness having roots of insecurity, the almost over-the-top, cringy expressions of Avalanche, and subtlety of some of the Shinra employees were my highlights. The ending was satisfying from a gameplay sense, but perhaps not from a storytelling sense. However, again, this can be forgiven given that it's only the first third of the story. One interesting thing they've done is introduce an alternate timelines aspect to the game, which means that certain memorable events in the game, especially in future games, might still be changed. According to Square Enix itself, Remake and Remake Intergrade sold over 7 million copies in 2023, approximately 2 years before time of recording. And since then, Rebirth has been released. Both Remake and Rebirth will be released for Switch 2, and of course, there will be a third title to conclude the reimagining. The game has been nominated for and has won numerous awards. Taking all this into consideration, I'm going to assign FF7 Remake Intergrade 5 stars for its cultural value. As far as negative content for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is concerned, there is quite a bit of it, even if it is generally inoffensive. There is some smoking and cigars, there's alcohol, and in fact the main characters meet in a bar. There is sexualization of many of the female characters, and sexual innuendo in a few humorous situations. If you played the original, then you are probably aware that there is a bit of cross-dressing as a disguise, implications of prostitution, and a drag queen sequence. There is vulgar language throughout, and significant violence, although most of it is not graphic. The main characters are also terrorists, but I actually think that the game handles this better than the original did, with the terrorism itself being questioned. There's also some positive content in the game, with positive portrayals of orphanages and people helping each other in times of poverty and crisis. ESRB rates this as T for teen, which I feel is quite reasonable. In my opinion, the themes of Remake Intergrade are generally positive. For more analysis on the themes of the game, check out my biblical themes videos for this game. Overall, I'm going to give the game 4 stars for spiritual value. I think the cost for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is quite good for a AAA title. For the time poor, the main story can be completed in about 30 hours.
But tell me, these stairs, are these stairs ever gonna end?
For the time rich, there is plenty of optional content that I mentioned earlier. In addition, you can replay the game on hard, which is supposed to be pretty balanced. FF7 Remake Intergrade bundles in a DLC, Intermission, a new standalone story following Yuffie, which I actually enjoyed. In the original Final Fantasy VII, I found Yuffie to be the most annoying character, and I rarely used her. This version of Yuffie, while still an annoying high school girl, feels a little bit more relatable, especially in her interactions with Sonon.
Boss? As in me?
And while the story wasn't anything special, there is a bonus scene of the main party as a reward for finishing the DLC. I also played all of the Fort Condor minigame missions, which was surprisingly fun. One thing that I found incredibly irritating are all the walking sequences, but my understanding is that these are essentially load times. FF7 Remake Intergrade retails for $39.99 USD and can sometimes be found for about 25% off, which I think is excellent value. Overall, based on the content value, narrative accessibility, and asking price, I'm going to give the game 5 stars for cost. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is honestly the remake we all wanted. It checks all the boxes in terms of updated visuals, points of nostalgia, and faithfulness and respect to the original. It changes the story enough to keep us guessing, and after 9/11, I honestly thought that they would never be able to remake this game due to the terrorism elements of the narrative, but times have changed. Still, I am glad that they did do a good job in small tweaks and giving context to the more problematic terrorism aspects of the original story. In my opinion, the only real questionable choice is the change from the original turn-based ATB system to a hybrid of that and a more action-based system. While I was very negative towards this choice before playing the game, I think the system really grew on me as I played, and I now view the change in a generally favorable way. It's been more than 25 years since I played the original, so obviously I've forgotten a lot, but I was pleasantly surprised by how fun the game was overall. And while there are some aspects of the game that are still obviously filler, I actually enjoyed the chapters of the story that were not in the original, especially Jesse's mission.
Yes, this is the contest I've been waiting for!
Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assign Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade the rating of priority purchase.
We did it!
That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.